Hey, Brass Facts here. Today we're going to take a look, or first look, at the Primary Arms 2.5 to 10x rifle scope. Before getting started, I want to mention a couple things. Number one, this is a first look. I do these so I can kind of prime myself on what to look out for, how my initial experience was, and then kind of compare how my opinion shifted over time. It helps guide the review, but it also gives a medium for people to ask questions on things they want to know about, want me to test, and things I might have not done otherwise. Hey, and it's kind of fun too, right? Also, why did I buy this guy? What's the purpose that I'm trying to fill with this? I bought this scope with the express goal of pushing the 5.56 platform as far as I possibly could, while still keeping weight, bulk, and capability within reason. While a bull-barreled sniper system in 5.56 would be noticeably more capable, it would be heavy and kind of unwieldy. And that's not what I wanted out of this. I wanted a lightweight SPR, something that bridges the gap with a general purpose or recce rifle and more of a long-range weapon system. In that regard, I think the 2.5 to 10x is a good fit versus, say, like a 4 to 16 or even farther beyond that, like one of those 20x's. It offers the functionality of a decent, usable low end for both eyes open style shooting. It is lightweight, and it still has the benefits of a sniper or rifle scope, parallax, dialable turrets, and the reticle that usually comes with these. Funnily enough, the industry has been sort of bullied out of making 2.5 to 10x's because it kind of touches in the territory of what LPVOs are capable of, and LPVOs are the industry's darling right now. So there's actually not that many of these designs out there, even though I actually do think they fill a good niche. But a big part of this review will be asking that question. Is a 2.5 to 10x worth it over a LPVO, like a 1 to 8 or even a 1 to 10? Because on paper, it doesn't seem like it should be. I'll spoil a little right now. There are benefits to running something like this. That's for a different video, probably its own video. The competition for this guy is actually quite small. When initially looking to piece together this rifle setup, it was the Trigicon 2.5x to 10x Credo, which I was actually a big fan of until I read that it doesn't have parallax adjustment. And I'll link to a video up here. CDAS basically shows off kind of how big of a deal that is. This scope, or that scope, is not very usable at its 10x setting, which is kind of the whole point. The Sig Whiskey, which should have been a perfect match considering my alcoholic tendencies, also lacks the parallax adjustment, so it's a no-go. The Burris Veracity, who comes up with these names, man, looks really good, but I think it's more of a hunting scope, and it's got a very limited reticle design, though it could work, especially since you get the dial, right? But I wasn't really as big of a fan of it. The Vortex Viper Gen 2 was another design that I really was considering, but 26 ounces and some other things kind of made me shy away from it, though it certainly seems to be a good scope. That really just left the Primary Arms 2.5 to 10x as the front runner in this category. 22 ounces, standard features, parallax adjustment, large objective lens, 44. Good reticle, good price. Really seemed like a decent foray into this category, so I picked it, right? Anyway, how has this guy specifically been for me so far in roughly 350 rounds, ranging from 500 yards to basically 0 yards, under night vision and without? Once again, this is a first impression, not a review. It's a very sad state of the review scene when people see first impressions but assume it's on the same level as a review. This isn't actionable information, just a primer really. Most important thing, glass. The glass is good, not excellent, but 100% acceptable for the price and punches above its price, to be frank. It's on par with the PX4i, maybe a little worse, about the same as a Vortex Viper. Low light conditions, pretty good. This has really good light transmission due to the acceptable/good glass and the large objective lens at 44. Shot this basically as it went dark and it worked just fine. The illumination on this thing, unfortunately, is pretty hot garbage. The chevron and I think 2 windage marks, I'm not sure, are illuminated, but these are not even close to being even daylight visible. I guess they're really just more for low light / night vision shooting. I'm not 100% sure what the goal was here. There's also a lot of illumination splash. You can see illumination underneath the chevron. I don't really know what's going on here. You combine that with the fact that this has a fairly good eye box at 2.5x, but it's a long eye box. And you're beginning to run into issues where you can't really passive aim because you can't fit your night vision goggles behind the scope at 2.5x, unless you're basically shooting off of a table. Granted, I don't think anyone is passive aiming with something like this. This is more for a mounted night vision unit. So not really a big deal, honestly. On to the reticle. This is a selling point for a lot of primary arms optics, so I'll try to get into it here. I'd say this thing does its job very well at 2.5x, and in a lot of ways, most of the design consideration seems to be around that 2.5x. The very large horseshoe, and then the chevron that is quite large for a scope of this size in the middle. You can shoot this on 2.5x, which is not something that is necessarily a given because this is a first focal plane scope. A lot of scopes focus on their 10x mode, you bring it back to 2.5x and you really struggle to find that center aiming point. And because this doesn't have functional illumination in the day, it does need bold and etched, reticle. My only complaint about this reticle, and let me be clear, I chose this reticle because it was my favorite of the options, right? The Viper and the, I think the Helios. So I chose this, I wanted this reticle. My only complaint with it is the infinite aiming point concept of a chevron on a precision gun. Not really my preference, and I would prefer a much more traditional aiming point. Yes, you have an infinite aiming point, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily needed for a number of reasons, and it does come with some downsides. Now, I know the chevron is there to make the 2.5x functional, and that was a trade-off, so that's cool in my eyes. Talking with some ELR shooters, most of them like to center their reticle by actually seeing, equal amounts of target above and below their reticle. Now, you can't do that with the chevron because the chevron at this size, even with first focal plane, is too big for that. You can only see above the target. Yes, you have an infinite aiming point, but it's difficult when your target is roughly the size of your reticle, right, the chevron. You combine that with the fact that you're probably going to be dialing, and there's no wind holds at the 0 mark, right? It's just the chevron, and you begin to run into some issues. Where are you holding? A lot of your target is obscured, so on and so forth. There's a lot of precision, in my opinion, that's actually lost in this scenario. However, functionally out to about 400, this doesn't matter because the target is generally big enough that this isn't an issue, and the wind calls aren't bad enough that it matters much. As a side note, I don't really dial wind, I hold for wind, so the concept, so I do need to see around my target. However, I came up with a workaround that works quite well actually. Out to 400, good to go. But once you get past that, right 550-ish, you begin to notice your issues. I'll simply dial to my target, let's just say, 5 mils, 5 mils. I just dial down one, which puts me here. This is fine and usable. If I want wind calls, I'll dial down 2 instead of 1, which puts me here. And I get wind holds. I'm also now in the tree area. So if I fuck up, I still get the benefit of being able to rapidly make adjustments if I can see my splash. Cool, very good actually. I think this works really well. Granted, I'm going to be testing it out much farther in the coming months, just kind of warming up on this platform. So, as you can see, most of this was personal preference driven, but once again, first impressions. And as you can see, this reticle is pretty good in terms of being versatile in this regard. Though I'd still like to see some wind holds left and right of the chevron though. Just a small thing. Next up, turret and turret accuracy. An important thing to note with scopes like this is turret accuracy. If a turret is accurate 90% of the time, you are going to lose your 0 every 10 clicks, right? You're going to move by 1 radian. 90% is obviously completely unacceptable. But even something like 99% accuracy means that over the course of 1 to 2 range sessions, you will shift by half a radian. So accuracy is incredibly important, even over a large sample size. I did a preliminary testing to see if I wanted to spend time with the scope, and I did 1,500 clicks. Each click is a 10th of a rad. Too much fallout. 10th of a radian, and Yeah, 1500 clicks is a lot. I noticed a very imperceptible shift, which could have just as easily been the turrets, me, or shifting conditions. Even if it was the turrets, right, skipping a single, what appeared to be a single tenth of a radian, that equates to something like 0.1% failure or 99.9% accuracy, or it'd actually be 99.95% accuracy, which is well within the reason of what a lot of turrets, especially something priced in this bracket, are capable of doing. So that's good. I'll probably do a future more extensive test, but so far I'm happy to commit more time onto this platform in terms of the turret accuracy. I had a slight issue when this arrived where the turret ring was slightly misaligned. I thought maybe it just wasn't set right, but it turns out the zero stop has a index mark that your turret sits in, and my zero stop is ever so slightly offset, which isn't much for normal turrets, but on something like this where you look at witness marks, it kind of sucks. As you can see, I was offset by about half to maybe a fourth of the thing, right? But because there is a decent amount of play when you put this thing back together, you can kind of force it to bias towards one side or the other by a couple of degrees, and I was able to realign it, even though my witness mark for the zero stop was not witnessed properly. Or I don't know what the terminology here would be, but yeah. The turrets feel good. I wouldn't say they're amazing. There is noticeable play as you break the tension to click over, but it's certainly better than a lot of scopes in this price bracket and does well enough to accomplish the task. It's good enough to the point where you don't feel like you're going to overspin or underspin when you're trying to get to your precise dial. But like I said, these were my first impressions. What I noticed, what I didn't notice perhaps, and a lot of other things. My pool of experience with this thing is quite low so far. I've shot it for about 300 rounds at multiple conditions, and there's a good chance I will entirely change some opinions, or maybe I will change no opinions, or I'll completely flip my opinion about how this optic does. You can't know that yet, so we'll see. As this review goes into 1,000+ rounds, I will begin to update my opinions, change how I view the optic, change how I use the optic, who knows. Anyway, all in all, I'm pretty excited for this optic. I dig it. That's a pretty good start for a review. Alright, that's been some brass impressions for you. Thanks for watching. These reviews ain't cheap, especially with ammo being the way it is. So if you want to throw a couple bucks my way, support the channel, and you like what I do here, then consider throwing some money in the subscribe star, link down below. That being said, if money's tight or you just don't feel like doing it, no worries. Commenting, liking, all that stuff, good to go. Also, I do want to say, I don't know exactly when I'm releasing this video, but it's been a tough start to the week for obvious reasons. I really, really appreciate the support. There was support in the comment section and elsewhere of people, backing me up essentially. So I appreciate made that situation suck a lot less. I made sure not to really reply to any comments because I didn't want to feed any drama, so it could die down faster. But I read every single comment. Once again, I really appreciate the support of strangers coming to back me up when my chips were down. I won't forget it. Thank you.
Get him. Get him. Yeah, you did it. Get him. Yeah, you did it. Yeah, we were so fierce. Good job.